we continue to, of course, try and establish exactly what eyewitnesses also have seen, what they may have heard during the time that the fire erupted. Let me cross back to our colleague, Bafedile Mwerane. At this moment, I understand, standing next to a tenant or a resident in the neighboring building, just close and right next door to the building that caught fire. Bafedile, good morning.
Well, at this point in time, we're seeing more and more officials having to descend down here in trying to intervene in what really transpired. Earlier on, when I spoke to the MMC of safety, public safety in the city of Johannesburg, has actually raised concerns with regard to these buildings, very much dilapidated, left derelict as they are. I'm going to talk to Mpendulo here. Mpendulo is staying the opposite direction of the bent building. So, Mpendulo, you're telling us that it was really chaotic since in the morning. What did you see and what was happening?
It started around 12:30, whereby we heard people started screaming, "Help, help, we're dying." So immediately we went out. We saw people jumping out of the windows as they were rolling curtains that side. So they managed to jump out of windows, but there was one woman who was trapped on the top. So we thank the firefighters for coming on time, and also the security guards at my complex. They played a very vital role. So yeah, I only managed to sleep now around 7 in the morning, and now I have to go to work. This was really a traumatizing scene because a lot of children died, and most of these people, I know them because we were like neighbors and we're like a community. Yeah.
But you're saying that a lot of them were using drugs. How do you explain the living conditions here?
The living conditions is bad. The living conditions are bad here because mostly this is an area where drugs dominate the most, and we just used to it because when you get to an environment, you adjust to it. So we just got to. I moved here because of the pre-explosion, but now seeing this, I need to move again to another safe place. Yes.
Earlier on, we spoke to the MMC for Public Safety in Gauteng, talking about these dilapidated structures. Have you ever entered here? I've seen a lot of people trying to enter a number of these buildings, but coming out there having to explain the terrible situation. How do you explain?
I've never went inside because I know these places are not safe, number one, and these places are dominated by foreign nationals. So yeah, I've never been inside of the buildings. I only know the people on the streets because we're a community, and I recently moved to this place. So you know, when you get to a place, you need to know the people around. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mpendulo. There, he's one of the witnesses having to explain the environment and the living conditions in this informal settlement in the Johannesburg CBD, having to explain that it's really a terrible situation. People and young children in particular having to actually be exposed to an environment like that.
Yeah, I mean, Bafedile, quite concerning to hear some of the details in terms of the description of how most buildings look like inside. Reports also coming in that this particular building that caught fire with that number sitting at 64 having been died at the moment. I mean, it had partitions inside, a 5-floor building, but it had partitions, shacks inside. So you can imagine, you know, the dilapidated building infrastructure inside, not ideal living conditions. And you can also imagine what perhaps could have equally contributed to the fire not being able to be contained in time to save those lives. But one can also imagine, you know, how many more buildings in the Johannesburg CBD, in most CBDs around the country, be it in Tshwane, be it in Durban or even in Cape Town, how many perhaps even look like this. This being quite a concern, but also a warning if nothing is being done. I want to just check and see if Heidi Jockers, my colleague, we can get a hold of her just to establish if there's any developments from where she stands right now. Heidi, good morning to you. We're coming to you live, Heidi, if you can hear me, and just to try and establish there any other developments from where you stand, Heidi.
Yes, Tumelo, I just want to also ask for forgiveness because I keep looking around because this is a developing story and there are lots of elements to it, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't miss any official that perhaps comes here. But we do understand that the death toll still remains at 64, 43 people injured. I have seen city official Floyd Brink here at the moment, together with a number of other MMCs. We do expect the mayor to arrive at about 9:30 this morning. So officials are, I would say, albeit late, they are starting to arrive and really get a sense of what exactly is happening. As 63 people have tragically lost their lives because of this fire that seems to have started just after 1 o'clock this morning. We spoke to one mother who says that she got woken up by her son that was shouting at her, saying to her, "Why do you keep locking the door? I've told you before that you need to stop locking the door." And what we heard from the MMC of Public Safety, which I think really took me aback, was the fact that you found people that were trying to get out of the building. So there seems to have been a lot of security gates, especially if this is a hijacked building. The whole setup of a hijacked building is very complex and obviously very illegal, because you have people that are you have people that are actually two people are supposed to be in a room, but then you have like 10 people in that room, and then there are gates to separate it. So that seems to have been a real difficulty. Oh, I'm so sorry. I have to move out of the way, Tumelo, because this ambulance needs to open up its doors. But that's the difficulty. So what I'm trying to get at is that the MMC was saying that a number of people were found literally at those security gates trying to get in and trying to get out of the actual building. At the moment, I don't know if Asanda can show you, but this building is gutted. It seems as though this fire was rather extensive. It seems as though this fire was a very strong one. I mean, 60 people have now tragically lost their lives. I do see a large police van that has arrived. We have also been told that the bodies are still lying just opposite the building. So it's still a very active scene. We don't know if that number is going to increase. I'm going to ask you once again just to bear with me. I just want to double check on my phone if there has been any sort of increase at this moment, but it seems as though there is nothing. I want to also see if I can spot Mr. Mulaudzi anywhere, but I don't see him at the moment. I just want to also see if I can see Mr. Floyd Brink. I don't see him. So at this particular moment, I think everybody is just trying to figure out what's going on. I do still see firefighters going in Tumelo, which worries me, because that's possibly an indication of recovery operations. Mr. Mulaudzi did tell me earlier on air that at this point it's not rescue and recovery, it's just recovery, especially in the building, because we do know that the fire was so bad that they don't suspect anybody still survived in the building. If they did not manage to get out and they're still inside, the likelihood of them being alive is very little. I do see Mr. Mulaudzi. If you can just give me a moment, Tumelo, so that I can just try and call him.
Let's give you that moment, Heidi, and perhaps you can indicate once you have Mr. Mulaudzi with you, heading EMS out in Johannesburg, present alongside his colleagues. And I think at the moment we're seeing those visuals at corner Delvis and Alberts, this in downtown Johannesburg, Marshalltown to be more specific. And this was a hijacked building, 5 floors to be more specific. However, we do understand that there were partitions inside, there were shacks inside. Heidi just indicating a bit earlier on that in a room that is supposed to at least accommodate 2 people, up to 10 people would be inside that particular room. So you can imagine how congested it was and how many people have been affected. But I can definitely just see that when it comes to ambulances and, firefighters and officials, or at least enforcement trying to recover those bodies, that work is still ongoing. At the top left there, we could still see some smoke coming out of one of the windows, and we know that smoke inhalation has been deemed as one of the causes towards at least the deaths as well as the injuries that have been recorded so far. So Heidi Jockers and Bafedile Moran is still on the ground on the scene, establishing exactly what is going on, any developments around the story. We know that MEC Lebogang Maile is expected to come to the scene at around 9:30 this morning. releasing that statement, that media statement, that he will be only at the scene at 9:30 to establish exactly what has happened and the possible motive behind the fire. Also, the mayor, that's Kabelo Gwamanda, is expected to only make it to the scene at 9:30. So in the next 12 minutes or so, or at least 22 minutes, actually, we're expecting government officials, at least some of them, to make it. And as far as the MEC Maile, as well as the Mayor Kabelo Gwamanda, saying that they will be right on that street, corner Alberts and Dalvas in Marshalltown, to establish and assess the situation following that fire that we understand started at the early hours of this morning. And, eyewitnesses just recounting how it's been such a tragic and traumatizing, scene to witness, because these were people they lived amongst, they were a community, they knew some of them, and unfortunately now they have to witness this tragedy as more and more recoveries are being made to the ground. But we do have there Heidi Jockers and Bafedile just trying to establish any developments for us. So I suppose when it comes to the MEC and the mayor addressing the media, we're expecting that from 9:30 they'll be able to be at the scene to address. But still some smoke coming out. Firefighters still doing their job the best that they can to continue to make recoveries and ascertain what exactly could be not only the problem or the motive or the cause of this fire, but most importantly, those lives that may still be trapped inside. We understand that children as young as a year old have been reported to have died from this fire. Heidi Jockers, let me come back to you now as we, of course, try and establish if there are any other developments surrounding this tragedy this morning. Heidi?
Yes, I did get a sense from Mr. Mulaudzi that he rather wants to go and get an update from officials and site managers in terms of what the latest update is. But so far we have been told it is 64 people that have tragically lost their lives. 43 people have been injured and transported to various hospitals. I do see Mr. Mulaudzi getting a brief. He did indicate to us that he's going to come back and give us a further update. We have been asked as the media to completely vacate the one side of the area, and I think that is because they are trying to move vehicles in, obviously, because we do know that the 64 bodies are still here, and they are still trying to recover them and obviously transport them. We did see pathologists also on site earlier. So as I've mentioned time and time again, it does remain an active scene. I'm going to ask you to stay with me, Tumelo, because if you can, because we do know that Mr. Mulaudzi is getting a briefing at the moment, and I do want to get him as soon as he's done with his briefing and an update, because we do know that he's very difficult to get a hold of. He's very busy and everybody's just trying to get an update from him. We do not know at this particular stage what caused the fire. We know that parts of this building, some parts had electricity, some didn't. We know that there might have been illegal connections to this particular building. We understand it's a hijacked building. We know that basically what firefighters found inside here and first respondents was basically an informal settlement inside here. So there were like actually shacks that were erected inside this building, which goes to show that this building was left by city officials to just go on without being monitored or checked. I do see Mr. Mulaudzi, so please just bear with us. Let's get a sense from him. You are live on eNCA, Mr. Mulaudzi. If I could just ask you to just stand a bit center there for me. Okay, let me just move this way. Maybe just give us an update on the latest.
Okay, the bodies are counted is still 64. The fatalities which were recovered on the incident, and then 43 people have been injured, treated on scene for smoke inhalation and then moderate injuries. So those people are just moderately injured. Most of them, they might be relieved from hospitals. They were transported to hospitals around the city, in and around the city of Johannesburg. So far we still continue. The body count might still increase. So we are moving up towards the building. As I said earlier, we will be moving floor by floor to make sure that we clear all the floors, and then from there, as soon as that we are done, we'll hand over the scene to South African Police Service to continue with their work.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Is it still an active scene, and are you still going through? So the death toll could possibly increase?
Yes. It is still an active scene. The death toll could still increase because we still have to move and make sure that along the floors there is no body which might still be trapped. And then from there, when we are remove any uncertainty, then we can hand over our scene to South African Police Service.
Okay, are you able to tell us which floor you are on already or not?
Oh, right now we are on the 3rd floor, so we still have to go like the 4th floor and the 5th floor.
Okay. Are you able at this point, Mr. Mulaudzi, to tell us out of the 64 how many minors?
Oh, the last time we checked, it was about 7 out of the, yes, like meaning children, young children.
You can't give us the ages of the...
No, at this stage, no. The only one which I can confirm about is a young child who might be like between 1 and 2 years. Yeah.
Robert, we understand from the MMC that one of the big issues that emergency services have faced is that there was a gate that was locked and it basically trapped people inside.
Yeah, actually the building itself, what we need to highlight to our viewers at home is that they must just have a picture of an informal settlement inside the building. So therefore, the chances of one being trapped inside that building they are very much higher because of the partitions and all the things which they are using to create those structures. Hence, you find out that there's a lot. Hence, we want to make sure that we are sure that there's no any other bodies which are still trapped in that area. So of course we expect that because it's an abandoned or a hijacked building, which most of the time you find out that the people who are in the building they don't really even pay maybe for the services rendered by the city, of which you find out that even the structure itself, the structural integrity of the building might not be up to scratch also. So there's a lot of risk. Hence we're discouraging our residents who are staying in the building to go back there, because some they want to go back there and try and recover some of their items. It might be a very much dangerous exercise if we allow people to go back there. So that is where we are now. So we have reassured the people who might still be having some people who are missing, there are family members who are missing, that we'll do our best to make sure that we clear all the floors and we are sure that there's no any other bodies which might still be trapped there, and then from there we'll hand over the scene to South African Police Service.
Just the confirmation, what is the death toll and how difficult has it been?
Yeah, the death toll is still at 64. Out of those 64, it's 7 children. The youngest being 1 year old, or 1.5 or to 2 years old.
I would like to... What caused the fire?
No, at this stage we don't know the cause of the fire incident itself, but the residents in here, the cause of the fire might be anything. It might be illegal connection, it might be other maybe heating devices which they are using, but that investigation will be done by our fire safety colleagues who will conduct that investigation together with the South African Police Service.
Sorry, Mr. Mulaudzi, I just want to ask you how long it took you to bring the blaze under control.
Okay, the call we received around 1:30, so we're here. So I will say after 2 hours, the fire has been at that time being stopped, and then now we started recovering those bodies which we have them lying outside the building there, as you see them there.
Why do you have them lying outside there? Do you not have space to collect them?
No, right now they will have to be collected by the forensics unit. So we're just giving them a space so that they can be able to do whatever they're supposed to do. Hence we're saying our job here is slowly getting done, because we came in here, we extinguished the fire, we made sure that the people are evacuated, those who were injured, they received medical care, and then from there they were transported to hospital. Right now we are on a session recovery stage, of which we are continuing with it. We are happy that maybe sometime during the course of the day we'll be done with that, and then we'll be able to hand over to South African Police Service to continue with their investigations.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mulaudzi. We do appreciate it. That is, of course, the spokesperson for emergency services, Mr. Robert Mulaudzi, just speaking to us about the latest death toll and, of course, what is basically happening here. It is expected to increase, Tumelo, and the tragedy in all of this is that they are only on the 3rd floor. This is a 5-story building, so they, of course, need to go to the next 2 floors, which means that the death toll is is most likely to increase, and that is the tragedy and the difficulty in all of this. 64 fatalities. Out of the 64, it is 7 minors.
Yeah, and we know that the youngest at this point, Robert Mulaudzi, Heidi, saying that could be the ages between 1 and 2, are quite concerning indeed. Also, I really heard your conversation with our colleague Gareth Edwards a bit earlier on, saying you did see one of the children, I think a boy, that is who survived, and but was rather sobbing on the side of the building, saying that she has, or rather he has no mom, he has no dad at this point, he doesn't know where they are, he doesn't know what's going to happen to them, he had no shoes on, and it seemed like he was wearing his sleepwear or his pajamas at the time. So quite tragic to hear not only of these fatalities, but also of the fact that those children, at least some of them who have survived as well, at this point, not being able to ascertain where their parents could be. But also we heard that 43 is the number of injuries in as far as those who, had moderate injuries taken to health facilities and are expected to perhaps even be discharged from hospital. That number, according to Robert Mulaudzi, still standing at 43. But Heidi Jockers will be sure to speak to you again as soon as there are any other developments on the ground, as you are on the scene of that fire out in downtown Johannesburg in Marshalltown.